Welcome to My Books and Storytime by Mybooksandstorytime. Let's explore. Set in the early 19th century, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is a novel of manners, social expectations, and the transformative power of love. The story follows Elizabeth Bennet, a witty and independent young woman, as she navigates love, misunderstandings, and the rigid social structure of Regency England. At the heart of the novel is her relationship with the proud and enigmatic Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. Their initial dislike and gradual transformation create one of the most beloved love stories in literature. A new arrival in Hertfordshire. The quiet countryside of Longbourn is shaken when news spreads that a wealthy young gentleman, Mr. Charles Bingley, has rented Netherfield Park. This news excites Mrs. Bennet, whose sole ambition in life is to see her 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia, married to prosperous men. With the Bennet estate entailed away to a distant male cousin, securing advantageous marriages is of utmost importance. When Mr. Bingley arrives, he brings with him a small but intriguing party, his snobbish sisters Caroline and Louisa, and his proud, reserved friend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. The town eagerly anticipates meeting them at the Meryton Ball. At the ball, Mr. Bingley proves to be amiable and charming, instantly taking a liking to Jane, the eldest and most beautiful Bennet daughter. Mr. Darcy, however, stands apart, appearing haughty and uninterested in socializing. When Elizabeth overhears him dismiss her as tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, she takes an instant dislike to him, branding him as arrogant and disagreeable. Jane and Bingley's growing affection. As days pass, Jane and Bingley's affection for each other deepens. Jane, with her gentle and kind nature, sees only the best in everyone, while Bingley is captivated by her beauty and grace. Elizabeth observes their interactions with amusement, but soon notices the growing interference of Bingley's sisters, who look down upon the Bennets and view Jane as an unsuitable match. Meanwhile, Mr. Darcy finds himself increasingly drawn to Elizabeth. Her lively wit, sharp tongue, and intelligence intrigue him, even as he struggles against his growing feelings. He watches her from a distance, concealing his admiration behind a mask of indifference. The arrival of Mr. Collins. The tranquility of Longbourn is disrupted by the arrival of Mr. William Collins, the pompous clergyman who stands to inherit the Bennet estate. Mr. Collins, absurdly self-important, arrives with the intention of marrying one of the Bennet daughters to make amends for the entailment. After initially considering Jane, he shifts his focus to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, however, is horrified by the prospect of marrying such a ridiculous man. When he proposes, she flatly refuses, despite her mother's desperate protests. Mr. Collins, wounded but undeterred, quickly turns his attention to Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's plain but practical friend. Charlotte, recognizing her limited options, accepts his proposal, securing financial security at the cost of personal happiness. A growing rift, Darcy and Wickham. Around the same time, Elizabeth makes the acquaintance of George Wickham, a charming and seemingly honorable soldier. Wickham tells her a tragic story of how Mr. Darcy cruelly deprived him of his rightful inheritance. Elizabeth, already prejudiced against Darcy, believes Wickham without question. His affable manner and apparent sincerity contrast sharply with Darcy's aloofness, further cementing Elizabeth's dislike of the latter. Meanwhile, the Bingley sisters and Darcy successfully orchestrate Bingley's departure from Netherfield, separating him from Jane under the pretense that he should not marry beneath his station. Jane, heartbroken but composed, visits London in the hope of seeing Bingley again, but Caroline Bingley ensures that she is kept at a distance. Elizabeth's visit to Hunsford, and an unexpected proposal. Elizabeth visits Charlotte at Hunsford Parsonage, near Rosings Park, the grand estate of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's imperious aunt. There, she unexpectedly encounters Darcy, who is visiting his aunt. Their interactions are tense, but Darcy's admiration for Elizabeth only deepens. One day, to Elizabeth's astonishment, Darcy abruptly confesses his love for her, proposing in a manner that is both passionate and insulting. He declares that he loves her despite her inferior social standing and family connections. Instead of being flattered, Elizabeth is enraged. She rebukes him, accusing him of arrogance and cruelty, particularly for separating Jane and Bingley, and for his alleged mistreatment of Wickham. Stung by her accusations, Darcy later delivers a letter explaining the truth. He admits to interfering in Jane and Bingley's relationship, believing Jane to be indifferent. However, he reveals that Wickham is a scoundrel who squandered his inheritance and attempted to elope with Darcy's young sister, Georgiana, for her fortune. Elizabeth, forced to reconsider her opinion, is troubled by her misjudgments. A summer at Pemberley. Months later, Elizabeth visits the northern countryside with her aunt and uncle, the Gardiners. By chance, they tour Pemberley, Darcy's grand estate, believing him to be away. Elizabeth is struck by the beauty of the estate and the loyalty of Darcy's servants, who speak highly of their master. Unexpectedly, Darcy himself appears. To Elizabeth's surprise, he is kind and welcoming, displaying none of his former arrogance. Darcy extends every courtesy to Elizabeth's relatives, even inviting Mr. Gardiner to fish on his land, an act of humility and respect. Elizabeth begins to see him in a new light, realizing that he is not the proud man she once thought. Lydia's elopement and Darcy's intervention. Just as Elizabeth's feelings toward Darcy begin to shift, disaster strikes. Lydia, the youngest and most reckless Bennet sister, elopes with Wickham. Given Wickham's character, it is feared that he will abandon her, bringing disgrace upon the entire family. The news devastates Elizabeth, who confesses the situation to Darcy. Unbeknownst to her, Darcy secretly intervenes, tracking down Wickham and bribing him to marry Lydia, thus saving the Bennet family from scandal. He does this out of love for Elizabeth, but keeps his involvement hidden. Reunions and renewed love. When news of Lydia's marriage reaches Longbourn, Elizabeth learns from Lydia's careless boasting that Darcy was responsible for orchestrating the match. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she realizes the depth of his love and the extent of her own feelings for him. Meanwhile, Bingley returns to Netherfield and, encouraged by Darcy, finally proposes to Jane. Jane, still in love with him, accepts. Their engagement brings joy to the Bennet family, but Elizabeth remains uncertain of her own prospects. Darcy visits Longbourn once more, and Elizabeth, with newfound humility and admiration, subtly encourages him. Finally, he proposes again, this time with warmth and sincerity. Elizabeth, fully aware of her love for him, accepts, sealing their transformation from prejudice and pride to understanding and mutual respect. Conclusion. Elizabeth and Darcy's marriage represents more than just a romantic union. It is a triumph of personal growth. Elizabeth overcomes her prejudice, and Darcy conquers his pride. Their journey is a testament to the power of love, humility, and self-awareness. As Jane and Bingley settle nearby, Lydia remains foolish but married, and Kitty matures under Jane and Elizabeth's influence. Even the formidable Lady Catherine is forced to accept the match she once opposed. With their love built on newfound understanding, Elizabeth and Darcy embark on a life together. Not perfect, but filled with respect, deep affection, and the promise of happiness. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe the World Icons.